Young men speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while. When will the lonely voice of youth cry, what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
Yeah, all right. Still love that song. It's fantastic. Welcome everybody. Um, how bad is the world right now? That's the question on the table. But to answer that question, we have our Sam Pellegrino, and we even have some in our Muppet Cup. Do you have a Muppet Cup? You should get one. They're great. You should consider. And of course, we got some tea from the Table Rock Tea Company. This is Westminster. It smells gorgeous. I mean, it's just beautiful smelling tea. I really like Westminster. It's got that nice hearty fall smoky smell. And I have some I'm still recovering from my cold, unfortunately. I have some ginger candy here cuz ginger candy good. Helps to knock out that cold. So I got breathing problems. Did you know Vicks makes a roll-on rub now, so you don't need to slather your hands in Vicks Pro Rub anymore? Genius. Genius. The miracles will never cease. So what happened this week? It's been a wild week. You may have heard there was an election, for example. That was fun. Um, a lot of people panicking about something very obvious, but that's all right. I guess if you couldn't see things coming, you couldn't see them coming. Uh, you want to deny numbers and reality, you can. And I had noticed when I went up to New England, very, 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 very blue leaning states, um, not so many blue leaning signs. Uh, quite the dearth of them, I would say. So that was interesting. Good to note. Excuse me. um, yeah, surprise factor 0. Um, oh, Dawn, I love the smell of Vicks when I was a kid. Oh, well, yeah, me too. Especially when I have a cold. Or worse yet, when you get that low level, this is my big problem right now is get this low level congestion. I can barely tell. And then you get the Vicks and it's like, now everything starts loosening up and then you can breathe again. Breathing is good. Highly recommend. Just a lot of meltdowns after the said election. People short of proving their critics correct. I don't recommend proving your critics correct. Kind of means you were wrong all along, but hey, uh, nothing I can do about it. It's just, you're gonna follow something. You better make sure you know what the heck it is. And I think that's part and parcel to the problem, right? Um, just some quick sort of numbery observations because data science is one of the things that I am quite good at. If you look at popular vote totals across 2012, 2016, 2020, and 2024, don't know what's going on there, but interesting. Interesting indeed. So, for example, third party votes fell right back in line, actually went down a tad. with what they had been. But they spiked in 2020, oddly, by a good percentage, right? Along, of course, with vote totals on Republican and Democrat sides. That should tell you something. Probably doesn't tell you what you think. Recounting of votes is what it tells you, in case that was not clear. Otherwise, the numbers are fairly stable. There's a few anomalies. Number of people that voted for Trump is less this time than it was the last time. That doesn't make any sense at all. There's no scenario where that makes sense, except double counting of existing ballots. Then it makes sense. So it's a little weird, right? To see all these anomalies, and I mean, anomalies happen, but also what's going on? And if you think that that sort of favors your desired outcome, then you probably got problems. But the good news in all of this is that money still cannot buy an election. This has been proven many, many times, but here as well. Let's be happy about who outspent whom, and even in individual races, it's always been true in the Senate. The person that spends the most money is not the most likely to win. Money does not buy elections. Just look at the statistics. You will see it. But let's be happy about that, right? The autists think they know how things work because video game, right? And they're good at video games. So they want the world to be a video game, because if the world is a video game and they're good at video games, they'll be good at the world. I mean, this is how people actually think. Irrespective of what they tell you or how high their IQ is or anything else, that's how they think. Right? But people seldom go back to, oh, I was wrong. Let's rethink our starting axioms. Let's rethink everything we were thinking. Like, let's go over all of it. Instead, they find some small thing that, but for that, would have made them right. And now they have more knowledge and they don't need to change because they've figured out the flaw, which was just, ignorance, roughly speaking. And so now they can go back to believing what they believed and feeling validated and justified because they figured it out. They figured out what they were missing, but they haven't changed their position. Did they learn? They didn't learn. You don't learn that way. But this theme of, video game methodology for understanding the world. Sally Joe, video games steal the zeal of men from the world and leave it in purgatory for Satan. Yes. A little over the top, Sally, but I'll allow it because I like over the top stuff. So, one pattern you will see in the world over and over and over and over again, which explains how bad it is people taking their skill or what they think of as their skill. They may not even be good at it, but they think they're good at it. And they project that as the skill that will solve the problem of culture or the world or whatever, right? And then they tell everybody about it in some story framework where that is the problem. Not the direct implication, but the unconscious indirect implication is that means they're part of the solution. So they inadvertently make themselves the hero. And one of the things that's wrong with the world is the flattening of the world. And so I've been working on, I do have all 4 parts of my Peterson Vervaeke talk done. I don't know how I didn't release part 2 this week, but I managed not to. Thanks, Cold. I've been working on Peterson Dawkins. So I did the first part of that today. Probably going to dual track release. That's my plan. One of the things I noticed in that conversation was this pattern of flattening the world. We are flattening things down, and thing in particular that I'm particularly upset about, because they don't know where the hell it came from or when. Is they were talking about a story contains a hero. I don't know what schools these people went to. They did not teach me that in school. Not all stories have heroes. And when you know that, the anti-hero is no longer necessary. Look at that. We removed a whole invalid category from the world just by not making a mistake that's clearly stupid. Huh. Right? There's protagonists and antagonists. Huh. Or one or more, in fact. And that resolves a bunch of things. It also requires you tracking more things. Also requires you not putting story in terms of a single character, which will inevitably end up to be yourself somehow. Funny how that works when you're trapped in your own little perspective. But we don't recognize we're trapped in our own little perspective. That's how bad it is. And the thing is, sometimes we have a hard time explaining what we are seeing in the world. And the bad news here is most often it's because the thing you're seeing is in your head and not in the world. It's not to say you're not also seeing things in the world, but the thing that you're identifying is probably a fantasy. When someone gives us an explanation for something that we've had in our heads, now we think it's in the world. Because after all, it came from somebody that was not us. But now they've enchanted us. And look, perhaps, not guaranteed, but perhaps if you have no words, the thing isn't real. Or you're too stupid to comprehend the thing that you see or sense or experience. Either is okay. This happens to everybody. Just know the difference. Discernment matters. You need to be able to discern what is outside of you and independent of you and what is not. Your fantasies are not independent of you. When you die, they will go away. The fact that somebody can take, we'll say, some vision of your fantasies and enact them after you are dead is not proof that they are independent of you. It's proof that you've infected that person with your fantasy. Not necessarily a bad thing, but also that's what happened. Got to be careful with these things. You need to have a deep sense for yourself, by yourself, of the way things are, of what is in your head and what is not. And when you don't have an acknowledgement that there are things that are just in your head, you are going to run into a problem. So that is a non-optional skill that you need to have. When you don't have that skill of sort of understanding your boundaries, where you and other things or other people begin, you run into very big problems. One of those problems is narcissism. Narcissists don't know they are narcissists, but they project that onto others. Same thing with stupid people, by the way. So if you see that in the world, if you see this narcissism out there in the world, grab a mirror first, just to be sure. Ask a friend. If they don't answer right away, grab the mirror harder. Are you constantly surprised about information about somebody you had an opinion on previously? Grab that mirror again. These are indications that your logic, reason, and rationality, your worldview are broken and that you need to fix them. They are not indications that the other person changed necessarily, although that happens. Don't assume that first. Assume you're the problem. This is how bad the world is. Nobody wants to assume they're the problem or are wrapped up in the problem or are contributing to the problem. Ask yourself some details about the people you see the most. Maybe your best friend, maybe your neighbor, right? Figure out, what's their favorite color? What was the last conversation we had? What's the struggle they're going through? Uh, what's when we talked last? Were they upset? Like, what was their emotional state? Right? What do you know about their family? Right? Try to recall the last time you ate a meal with them, what they had, what you had, right? If you cannot recall this for a significant number of the people that you see the most, grab the mirror again. That is a problem. Anselm, it was looking in the mirror that caused Narcissus to ignore Echo. Actually, no. Let me explain something very important. The mirror didn't cause the problem. The mirror is neutral material in the world. Caused the problem was falling in love with his own image. It was the passion and becoming overwhelmed with the passion. If you are the most beautiful person in the world, you should be humble. And if you're not, you will be narcissistic. Right. So humility is required to fight narcissism. And you get that from outside yourself, typically. Something that you have to take in from outside. And that's the issue. No one's grabbing the mirror and taking a look and assuming that even if you're not the problem, assume that you could make things better through your own behavior with no involvement from anybody else. Right? Strive for that first rather than blaming other people or systems or institutions or history or any other thing. And we're living in a world where women are, being seen as crazy while cutting off their own hair and screaming about not being controlled about the patriarchy. Well, something else is controlling you, and you clearly don't know what that is. So maybe being controlled by the patriarchy isn't the worst thing in the world. We're all controlled by the things around us in many, many ways that maybe we don't even understand. That is another thing that requires self-reflection. Why do I do the things I do? Why did I do that thing? What possessed me to cut off my hair in public on a streaming platform? Was it money? Was it followers? Was it power? Was it sticking it to some man or attacking the system, or which is all rebellion, by the way? And this is what we're discussing, right? What we're discussing is what controls you, what influences you, what impacts you, what are you exposed to? That's what we're discussing ultimately. There is no culture war. There's a battle for the formation of children and fellow persons. It's all about formation. People want to be in a bigger tribe. Who are these people that want to be in a bigger tribe? There's all kinds of small tribes out there. It's splitting all over the place. Welcome to the battle for having a culture or none at all. Choose wisely. Lots of people want you to believe that their worldview or their ideology or their thing is correct. That maybe the world is made of, people with very low IQs playing 4D chess somehow, which is impossible, right? Or maybe they're not playing 4D chess, they're just a pawn for the shadow lizard people or whatever. They want a bigger tribe. But those two groups are competing with all the other groups for people. That looks like a war. I would argue it's not a war, but it looks like a war. The bottom line is you have to look up to cooperate. Can't cooperate by looking across. All you're going to see is opponents. That's all you can see. And that's how bad the world is. That's what we see. You have to ask yourself about your beliefs in particular, but any beliefs, no, the ones that you have now, the ones that you hear later, the ones you have heard in the past. Is it self-consistent without being self-referential? Because self-referential things can be consistent. That's not hard. But if it's self-referential, it's parasitic and it will destroy itself over time if it doesn't destroy itself right away. And that's a good start, right? And what does the next step look like? Where does it lead? That's how you avoid the parasitic. Oh, this requires all these things. And therefore, when the next step comes, there are less of those things and the step after that, right? Etc. Where do these things end? Like what, where do they not? Where do they say they end? Where do they end? Those are different things. Right? Or did you start with the ending you wanted and try to work backwards? Because that's a red flag indeed. And that's what most people do. I want everybody to be nice, and they work backwards from there. Well, niceness isn't a virtue. What does it mean to be nice to people? If people need to be formed, if people need help against their will, because sometimes you need help against your will, very hard to be nice. You got to make up your mind. Has this been tried before? Because I bet it has. I bet somehow, some way, you or the person you heard it from is not the first person to come up with this idea. There've been a lot of people, and almost all of them were smarter than you. Sorry. So, we have some data. Why don't we use that instead of making something up in your head about how, new communism 4.0 is going to work or whatever nonsense you're into. You can look out in the world and see what's been tried. And whenever you look out into the world, if all you see are mistakes and problems, and you don't take away from that, the world is hard and good ideas are impossible to implement, then you've got a big problem. A very big problem. And you haven't even realized the extent of the problem that you have. And some ideas can't be implemented. In fact, almost all ideas cannot be implemented at all, much less poorly. And of the ideas that can be implemented, you're not the guy. That sucks. A little introspection, a little self-reflection, a little contemplation goes a long way. And research. No one wants to research, and no one's researching anything at all. They're not even looking back what happened last week. Oh, this represents a change. And yet I felt like I always held this position. That's a problem. That's the problem. And the thing is, a lot of people have been told that they can know enough to say, do a job, for example. And therefore, they'll choose the right person to work with. But what if a thesis like this is fundamentally false? That might be a hint. And then you'll follow nearly anyone and be self-righteous about it. Because you're sure, because you know your job well enough, that you know the people around you and you understand their motivations well enough. And also, you're a Muppet. I'm just saying. But we've run around telling people they are several orders of magnitude smarter than they are, and more capable than they are, and more competent than they are. And we've told them that your place in the hierarchy corresponds with your competence. Well, competence is very hard to measure, and this can't be true. And you didn't even notice. You don't know how well somebody can drive a car until they've driven the car and you've seen it for yourself. Everything else is hearsay and imagination. Before you have done a job, you do not know how good you will be at that job, and no one else does either. Now, some people can guess pretty well. That's rare, right? And that's the problem. But we're telling people they're far smarter than they actually are. We're telling them that their intelligence is important. What's important is your work. What's important is your participation. What's important is the true, the good, and the beautiful, without separating any of them from any of the others. What's important is how you behave in the world. What's important is what you exemplify in the world. What's important is who sees you. You know what's not important? How smart you are. You know what's important? How kind you are. That's weird. Unless that's reality. So why is it so bad? Because we're all LARPing as individuals. Simple as. I'm sure you've never heard me say this before. You're not an individual. You have never been an individual. You will never be an individual. You will never have been an individual. That isn't an option to you. There's no way it could have been. You're a person connected to nature and other persons in the world. You're not an individual. That is a ridiculous idea. The concept is bankrupt from the word jump. If you're LARPing something you can't be, that's coming at a cost. That cost is society, the culture, the world, all the things that were built up by people cooperating historically. That's the cost. And trying to be an individual over and over and over makes us narcissistic, egoic, self-righteous, causes us to project our psychology onto others and onto the world. And the thing about that is, the more focused you are on yourself, the less you notice what has control of you, the less you notice what actually influences you, the less you notice where your behaviors are coming from. Because if you think it's you, when you start to do bad things, either on purpose or by mistake, as it were, you will believe, because it will become true over time, that you are a bad person. You'll actually become a bad person. Yes, that will happen. Our narcissism allows us to be possessed by things we do not understand because we're too busy being independent. And we're going insane because we are alone, because we are destroying the quality of the relationships that we have around us. That's intimacy, the quality of your relationships. You're destroying that quality by trying to LARP as an individual. You're not an individual. We think we can know things because there's this space of objective material reality, which tells us the capital T truth, the scientific truth, the facts. There are more facts in the world than there are things you can hold in your head. Almost all facts are irrelevant to the world. Then we think we can wield that power we call truth. And of course, since we have it, others don't have it because we have it. And bingo, problem solved. The power object is now mine. Having mode indeed. And they think that's how power works. It's an object in the world. Someone has it, they wield it, it does stuff for them, it does their bidding effectively. I'm like, it sounds like a fantasy novel, a poorly written one, but a fantasy novel nonetheless. But that's how we're acting, or at least some of us. It's very having mode. Being mode is all about participating in the world. What do we do about this problem, about how bad the world is right now? We look up, we contemplate virtues and values. We focus on the true, the good, and the beautiful together without isolating them from one another, because that is a corruption. We add complexity to the world rather than subtracting it from the world. We cooperate rather than oppose. We sacrifice in the here and now for future, just like our ancestors did for us. How do I know that works? Because that's what's been going on the whole time. And societies that don't do that are all gone mysteriously when they sacrifice their children, for example, instead of themselves. We know very little about them because they don't continue. I don't think that's a coincidence. We need to participate with others rather than to converse with them. Talking to people is better than not talking to people, but only just barely. And it is no substitute for going out into the world and participating and sharing a meal, even in silence. The thing that makes conversations truly great is when they're done in physical participation. That is why people get the sense when they all get together from having been online that something wonderful happened because they're doing the same thing they did online, but in person. That is an upgrade. That doesn't mean what you were doing online was good. That doesn't mean getting together in person was better. They could both be bad. And the upgrade could be, oh, you're participating in person and it's bad, because that happens too. But when we don't have our eye on the true, the good, and the beautiful, when we don't have virtues and values to help us navigate our experiences, we don't know. But we think we do because we feel better, because we lack humility, much like narcissists. And we can't tell the difference because we don't know where we end and other things begin. We don't know. Why we don't know? Oh, I know. A lot of people don't know. They don't seem to spend much time on it either. I think that's why when meditation is helpful, it is helpful because people get to learn their boundaries. They get to learn that, oh, when I look inside my head, it's not some clean, clear vision where there's consensus and no noise. There's actually a lot going on inside my head I knew nothing about. I didn't think it was even there. It's been there all along, whispering to me, guiding me, changing me. Right. That's interesting. Isn't that interesting? That's very interesting. So that's how bad it is. We're stuck in our heads for no good reason. It's a problem. Ansman, there is a need for honest self-examination. We do get help from others, but the chief help is from God. Maybe. I don't know. You got to have a God first. I think natural help is limited. It is. Of course it is. Whether our own powers or that of others, right? We need grace from God to assist these. Sure, but grace from God is not the only thing we need. And that already came to us, so it's not. I think part of the problem is when you take an action, you screw it up. And you have to deal with that. And nobody likes that answer, but also like imperfect people in a fallen world or something. I don't know. Beyond God, all answers lead to oral tradition. Checkmate someone. Okay. Don, possessed is the perfect word for that. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we need to start talking about possession, man. And if we're not helping people with their possession, what are we doing? We're being narcissistic in that case. Anselman, not possible for the omniscient creator not to be 100% accurate. Well, that's true, but it doesn't mean he's acting in the world in the way we want. Maybe your own possession of God's judgment that's clouded. Maybe you don't have a God, or at least one that you know of. You presume too much, sir. That's the problem with people who are already in. That's going to become super clear in the Dawkins-Peterson conversation when I release that video I did today. And boy, it's going to be 16,000 parts, but we'll get there. Yon God, I never liked the duality of everything being able to used against you. There's no duality there. Anselman, Sally Joe should paint us a picture of Narcissus gazing into the water and Echo handing him a mirror. Not a bad idea. Don't get Sally Joe started on other projects. Plus, she's not feeling well. Narcissus would then have to look towards Echo to get a clear sight of himself at the same time. Yeah, true. Again, it's not about his sight. It's about his attention. He falls in love with himself. It's not seeing himself. It's falling in love with himself. That's the problem. If he didn't fall in love with himself, everything would be fine. He'd just be a normal person and not somebody who falls into the water and dies. Yon God. So it's just higher orders of P zombies all the way down. No, look, I mean, everyone gets possessed by things. And you have to account for that in yourself first and in others, or you won't understand the world. There are things that you are possessed by. And you don't know what they are. Only other people can see them clearly. So make good friends. Friends who care more for you than you care for yourself, maybe. Anselman. Use individual meaning entirely disconnected. No, that's how everybody uses it, dude. you're just missing what's happening around you. Individualism is a bad frame. That is not a good definition, which is the definition everyone's using. It's what they're doing. It's how they're acting in the world. It has nothing to do with words and your wishful thinking. We are individuals in relation. No, you can't have both. You can only have one or the other. You can't be an individual in relation. Individual means distinct, not totally isolated or independent. Okay. We are not distinct from one another. I'm sorry. There are boundaries, but we are dependent upon one another. We are not isolatable. That's the difference. We are not differentiable from our environment along certain metrics. That's what nobody likes to hear. Those are the things we have the most in common. Oops. Right. Nobody likes that. They want to be like a distinct thing and free from blah. That's rebellion. What you should try to do is to seek to be at one with the things around you, to savor the experiences in your life, for example. Yon God, this is all very pessimistic. I'm trying to ride the red wave of optimism here. Well, there is a red wave of optimism. Don, never surrender, Yanni. Don, you have got to tell me at some point through some fashion what you thought of those first few model videos, because I saw that you watched at least I think the last one. And I still think like that's talk about key to everything, at least in terms of understanding the world. Those first few model videos, man. Uh, first time I sent them to PVK, I sent the outline to him. He went, yes, with 3 exclamation points in all caps. I was like, okay, I'm on to something. But no one really gets it. And you say that none of us entirely independent of others. We're persons, dude. We're persons. We're not individuals. We're persons. Persons that are attached to nature, right, and each other, with the option to attach to something higher, or rebel and call ourselves independent. Up to us. Jan God. Isn't it a good reason we are stuck in our heads? Because if we're functional NPC, no, you're functional NPC because you're stuck in your head. That's how it happens. The industrial destruction of the natural world will be so much more efficient. No. You need buggy NPCs. No. You need to not be stuck in your head and therefore possessed by things you don't understand and therefore an NPC. Like the narcissism is making you an NPC. Don't do that. It's not that hard. Right. The reasoning is simple, right? If you take control over what your influences are, curate the signals coming into you as well as the signals you're sending out of the world, right? Then the things that will influence you and or control you, because in some cases this has to be controlled by things, right? I mean, I'm controlled by my car. If my car goes haywire, it goes haywire. There's nothing I can do. My computer reboots right now. It reboots right now. It controls that. I don't control that. Right? So, like, okay, but what are those things? And what can I do to mitigate the downsides of that influence and control? What if that influence controls all downsides? What if what's influencing me is heroin? I think we all do this to some extent. We just don't realize to what extent we need to do it. You need to control your environment to the extent that you are being manipulated towards the good instead of flooded with evil, because that's the world we're living in. Jan God. But you're wearing a monocle because this is serious and this is also not serious. Am I bipolar? Look, dude, I'm on the internet. I have a YouTube channel. I have 2 personas on my YouTube channel. This is a live stream. I want it to be fun for people because I talk about extraordinarily serious things here and I link them very, very directly to your life, unlike my recorded videos, by the way. Oh. Or my commentaries. Oh. If you think that somehow I am, what are we going to say? Some a pure agent that's not either not on purpose or incidentally influencing my audience, then you're nuts. I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't know everything that I'm doing, but I know most of it. This is all very carefully planned. Although some of it's sort of like late stage planning. It's just so funny. I was thinking about this today. This shirt is from Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii twice. I bought all these Hawaiian shirts in Hawaii. I almost never used any of them, even when I moved down south. Very occasionally, I'd wear a shirt. And now I have a bunch of these shirts for this live stream. The first time I bought one of the Hawaiian shirts in Hawaii on purpose, knowingly, with forethought and knowledge, I did not say someday in 14 years or something. 14? Yeah, it's 12 years ago. 12 years ago, I think was the first time I went to Hawaii. I will be using these on a live stream, but I knew I'd be using them for something. That's interesting. Dawn. I don't take notes, Mark. That's okay. I'm hoping useful ideas are washing over me, but I probably wouldn't. pass your quiz. It's not a quiz situation, Don. I'm just curious as to whether or not, like, there's a lot of stuff I tell people where I'm like, this should really click for you, and you should go, oh, and have your eureka moment. And nobody leaps up out of the bathtub screaming eureka. And I'm like, not nobody ever, but like the number of people I thought would leap up out of the bathtub and scream eureka is, we'll say, at least an order of magnitude greater than the number of people that actually do. It's not a quiz. It's a feedback thing. Like, oh yes, I see what you're saying. Like those early model videos in particular just basically show you all the people in the world and their limited perspectives and how to upgrade them. I'm not saying you'll be able to do it. I'm not saying I give you the tools in the model videos necessarily. Some of them maybe I do. It's sort of hard to tell. Like all of this would be helpful feedback. Like, oh yeah, I know somebody like that. I know somebody like that. I know somebody that's there, right? Because it's actually a scale. Like, oh, people are stuck here and people are stuck here and here and here and here. I think there's 12 levels or something crazy. I don't know. I didn't count them all because it's not that kind of thing, right? But it is oh, you can use these to figure out where people are, right? So it's not a quiz. It's not a quiz thing. Jan God, at least there's the occasional chat interactions. Yes, there are. Don, oh, on the internet, nobody knows you're not a pirate. That's correct, or at least part-time. There's a lot of symbolism behind the pirate thing. You don't understand any of it, I bet, but that's okay. That's good. Ixon, pirates are fun. Exactly. Thank you. Sally Joe, we are trying to tone down Mark with props for palatability. What do you want? What do you want about to the top palace? Polis? What is that word? Polos? Yes. What do you want oh yeah, the button to the polo. Yeah, whatever. I have that going on. I think you guys are wrong about that. Anselman, if when I appear, he'll be in a nice shirt and necktie. I'd love to have you appear, Anselman. So much to talk about. Hopefully not theologically, because I still hate that frame more than life itself. But anyway, Jan God. Trying to impress a man by talking about his clothes is a very Diddy move. Shopping talk. What would 50 say? Dude, really? That is quite funny, though. Sally Joe, we need more people to disappoint Mark with questions. Exactly. It can't just be my questions to disappoint Mark. Yeah, Sally's doing yeoman's work. I'm being disappointed. Or undisappointing, I should say. So look, I think I'm caught up. I think I said everything I wanted to say. It is bad. How bad is it? Yeah, it's that bad. Look, you want to join? Feel free to jump in. Don, I have a T-shirt that says piracy. It's all fun and games until someone loses an eye. Exactly. I like that. I should get one of those T-shirts. It sounds good. I have quite the collection of clever T-shirts, I assure you. A lot of them from Sargon of Akkad back when he was selling his T-shirts to basically bootstrap his empire, his media empire, rather successfully, I might add. I do cherish those. I have one on right now, which is the it's the World Health Organization logo, and it says the Chinese Health Organization. That was back during the fake news virus scam. Yeah, that was a good one. Star Wars is pro Jedi propaganda. Another classic. Yeah, I really like that one. Oh, I got this one too. It's one of them crossover genre T-shirts. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. But he's got a lightsaber and he's facing Vader. Yes. You're gonna love The Princess Bride. Anselman. One of my boyhood poems was about my ambition to be a pirate. Never did realize that. Well, you could come on the stream, Anselman, and realize your boyhood ambition. I know Castle realized his boyhood ambition to be on a pirate ship by joining the stream a few times with his pirate background and all that. So it can happen for you still. I talk about not knowing what possesses us. When my mother initially found this house, she was just getting over her first round of cancer. And she found me this house. I got the other house gets stolen, right? The $500,000 house in Massachusetts gets stolen. So she finds this house. And she's like, "This is the perfect house for you." And meanwhile, I'm looking, I don't know, 60 miles north of here. So one day I was like, "Well, it's here. Why?" Um, and I saw the house and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's my house." I'm just reading about the house going, "This is my house. Like, where has this house been my whole life? This is the house. This is my house. Like, this is definitely my house." And I've got a pond and an acre of water. It's huge, right? And I got 12 acres of land. Well, an acre of it's actually water because it's a pond. But um, the property is bordered by a creek. I've always wanted a property bordered by a creek. Why? Because you don't want it near the house because floods. And that's definitely a danger here. It's not a danger for this place because it's way far away from the house. And the pond can't overflow anywhere near the house. It's all that is on the downside towards the creek. Um, but like it's good to know, right? And I had forgotten when I was young that I wanted a house with where I could walk down to the brook, because in New England it's called the brook or the stream, and I had a pond. I didn't know that that had sort of possessed me that whole time through through my childhood right up to my adulthood. And then it just so happens that yeah, in South Carolina, this costs almost no money, practically free, and you can do that. So yeah, young God, stealing a house is an epic magic trick. Not really. The 2008 housing crisis stole tons of houses, probably a few million houses from people. Um, for no good reason, and the government facilitated it to cover up for their end of those crimes of fraud. See my video on domicide, losing a home, and then you can get some small details into what happened there. Uh, Also, why I'm pretty pissed. Also, I put everything I put on hold, obviously, because funeral and illness and all this other stuff. But I have a bunch of research. I haven't collated it yet to do a video on the 2008 housing crisis in detail because I've done a bunch of the research already. The research I haven't done is what all the retarded people who are wrong about everything are saying about what happened back then, because they didn't do their research. They haven't done it now. I noticed a few interesting things, like they all have these complex, or not even complex. They have these economic theories, right? And they'll tell you, like, well, there are tranches and there are bad mortgages and there are all these foreclosures. And I'm like, okay, what are the numbers? None of them have, zero of them have numbers. They have these theories based economically and they don't have the data to back it up. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty bad out there. I'm like, dude, you've got a theory based on numbers. Why don't you bring the data to back up the theory with the numbers? That's weird, huh? It's the problem. And then people listen to them. There's tons of videos in 2008 housing crisis being made still, and they're all wrong about everything they're talking about. And I'm like, you people are, why are you doing this? And some are just stupid, but whatever. Makes me angry. Sanjuro, Luke was pro redemption. Well, that's true. If you vote alliance, the Jedi will control your soul. I guess so. It's still pro Jedi propaganda. Until the new ones when it was subverted, but whatever. Yon God, I guess you have a social duty to produce your report. Don't think so. The problem, see, this is the problem in a flood of information. More information is not going to make things better. Doesn't matter how right you are about something if no one can hear you. I went into this on Twitter a few weeks. Maybe it was last month. Yeah, it must have been last month. Somebody was mentioning, like, yeah, our voices need to be heard. And I'm like, bro, your voice is heard. So what? By whom? What's your reach? Oh, putting everything on the internet didn't solve a problem. It created 4 more. That's the problem. That's the problem. Sally Joe, experiencing what you are without what you thought was stable is a rarefying experience. That is true. Beyond God, lol. No wonder why this guy watches Federaci. Gives me permanent Miranda syndrome. Who are you referring to? I watch maybe 1 in 10 of Jacob's streams, along with a lot of Jacob's audience, actually. Um, Don, crap. Now I have to go look up Miranda syndrome. Now you can just ignore him. It'll be fine. Yeah, look, I like Jacob, but lots of people, including Jacob, and you saw that on the last stream, will come up with reasons for things. And then when you ask them to back it up with evidence, they don't have any. And I'm not saying that's bad. Like, there's lots of things where you're not going to have any evidence, but then just state it as a belief. And don't try to put that belief on other people, right? Like, I regularly state things and say, "Hey, this is what I think about it. You can think what you want, because I really don't care." Because I don't. Like, I'm happy to cooperate with somebody if they're willing to cooperate. And if they're not, that's fine too. I can't make them. I don't want to make people cooperate. It sounds horrible. It's extra management. Don, Jacob is my home base. I just like it there. Yeah, well, you should. I mean, Jacob's place is pretty comfy at the end of the day. And he's done a lot to do, like, he knows what he's doing. He's done a lot to do that. I wish he had kept his original project going where he had much more content. And, a bunch of people had streaming keys and were streaming on his channel regularly. And he did away with all that for reasons which remain mysterious, especially given his comments last week where he claimed he wanted more content. It's like, bro, you deliberately torpedoed a bunch of content on your little channel network thing. I don't know why you did that. Also, quality over quantity, my friend. Quality over quantity. If you look at any of the successful YouTubers, most of them reduced quantity and increased quality, and then increased their audience as a result. Just is the way it is. People don't have a lot of time. They'd rather spend it wisely. Even unconsciously, people do this all the time. And Jacob doesn't seem to understand that principle, even though if you do an actual analysis with real data, which is not that hard, you can see the pattern. And we're not paying attention to patterns, right? We're pretending that the patterns don't exist. The problem is the institutions or the systems or the vote or the politics or the IRS or the capitalism, which is, a magical invisible space dragon. It's not. It's the patterns. And the patterns are the most real thing. This is a theme that they're sort of dancing around in the first 22 minutes of Dawkins and Peterson and O'Connor there. It's kind of remarkable that, man, I almost didn't survive that 22 minutes, I gotta say. But I'm going to do the rest of it. And hopefully I finish it off quickly. And like I said, I'll double release. So I'll do 2 commentaries all next week if I can. I don't know if it'll be ready because it's not up to me. I have little worker bees and they're all busy. So we'll see how quickly they get stuff done. But I do have content. I don't have any recorded videos. I gotta get on that train. But that illness and the fact that it's not completely wiped out by now is just completely weird to me. Yeah, being just a little bit sick and not being able to like really dig down and focus and do research. And I'm working on some research for another project. So not being able to do that has really set me back. But I'm hoping that won't be that way for long, and soon we can kind of get a rolling with it, Benjamin Franklin. I really enjoyed a recent podcast I heard with Anna Harris in Impact Theory. I don't know who that is. That girl is smart. Yeah, that's usually a bad sign. I'd rather have somebody kind than smart. Beyond God, it's a cover up for the H7N9 leak. Spoiler alert. Okay, dude. Everything is a cover up. That's the problem, is that in a flood, yes, everything is technically a cover up. Also true. And this is the problem with conspiracy theories. It's not that they're true or false, but they might be inevitable. Things happen, right? when you're more concerned about money uh, than you are about the true, the good, and the beautiful, the pedophiles will sneak in. When you're more concerned about politics than the true, the good, and the beautiful, the pedophiles will sneak in. When you right? Oh, any number of other things too, by the way. So if you wonder why there's pedophiles all over the place, that's why. If you don't focus on the morality, on the virtues and the values, the bad things multiply within the system in all cases. And there's no like easy solution to that. There's no like quick fix that does away with that. And that's the problem. You just need to keep your eye on the true, the good, and the beautiful, on virtues and values, right? You need to participate in morality in a way, or everything will get worse and there'll be pedophiles everywhere for sure. That's, Young God, a quarter of all domestic birds died. That's a lot of dollars. Someone could sue. Birds aren't real, bro. Thought you knew. The birds aren't real thing. Just actually mega bird. We know. They're spy devices. It's like, yes, I love this. This is my favorite version of the universe where birds aren't actually real. And somebody doctored up a picture of a pigeon with a bunch of circuit boards inside. It's like, this is so good. Birds are just CIA spy devices. Absolutely. Absolutely. Young God. Quarter of dinosaur slaves kept for consumption. Sure. I like consumption of dinosaur slaves. I'm okay with it. I'm a big fan. But you see, I mean, using things that happen in the world, like somebody saw something unidentifiable in the sky, right? And turning that into a conspiracy. That's why things are bad. Maybe we can't identify everything in the sky because the sky is much bigger than we are and we're limited creatures. And there's lots of phenomena we don't even know about yet, much less have studied. I mean, this is why cryptozoology is a thing. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, there could be a Bigfoot. So what? The idea that you can rule it out scientifically is already absurd. Science can't do that. We know that. That's not how science works. And this is one of the things that Dawkins keeps tripping over his own ego, making ridiculous statements. We know this isn't real. Like, how do you know that, bro? Were you there? You weren't there. You're not that old. I mean, you're old and stupid, but you're not that old. I mean, you might be that stupid. That's a different problem. And like, what are we doing? But we're getting caught up in all these things, and there's no reason for that. The number of people that believe in the World Trade Center conspiracy, Building 7 conspiracy, and I'm like, bro, they swapped the picture. That's all they did. That's the whole trick. They just swapped one picture on you. The picture's not real. They just mislabeled it, and you fell for it because you're a rube. You're a Muppet. I mean, it's easy to fool people. I watched a whole 2-hour show on like the moon landing fake. The original breakout. Oh, the moon landing was faked, man, and we have the evidence. And they totally had me because they said the following. I remember it like it was yesterday. They said, look, shadows are always parallel. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's wrong, by the way, completely. But I missed it, right? And then they showed some shadows on the moon and they didn't look right. And I'm like, those shadows don't look right. And you don't think about it yet. Shadows don't always look the same. There's lots of times when you go, those shadows don't look right. And there's lots of reasons for that, right? And so I was fooled by this until they went into the photography on the moon. And they said, this can't be a picture taken on the moon because in the background of the moon, there are stars. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a photographer. And of course they wouldn't come out. You'd need an extremely long exposure time, be a pain in the ass and blah, blah. Like I knew right away because I'm a photographer. I actually know this shit. And Then I was like, wait a minute. And then I went up and looked up shadows and went, oh, the bastards fooled me. Because we get fooled by these things. Everybody does. Needed convos. My mom has seen literal aliens. Maybe. Oh, I'm not kidding. Okay. I don't not believe you. How does that change the world? Somebody did this on Twitter the other day. Actually, I think Kale Zeldin. Kale's such a weird individual. He was one of the ones that was in on like, what would change tomorrow if it turned out that aliens were real? And I'm like, well, A, that's already the wrong question, and B, nothing anyway. Right? The right question is, what would it take to convince you that aliens were real? Right? Once you were convinced that aliens were real through whatever mechanism, what would change for you? And the answer is still nothing. Right? Because aliens were real all along and it didn't affect your life before. Why would it now? That's a good question. Now, if the aliens bring a spaceship and hover over the earth and block out the sun, my answer changes, but not based on the existence of the aliens, right? My answer changes based on what's happening around me. That's when I change what's going on. That's why it's not useful to focus in on foreign wars. The foreign wars are going to happen with or without you, or they're not going to happen with or without you. And if your behavior is changing on the basis of that, you're being influenced by something that doesn't impact your life directly. Oops, maybe don't do that. Right? That's possession. Right. Now, what can you be possessed by and to what extent? And where are these things coming from? That's a different set of questions, a far more interesting set of questions, perhaps. But let's get everybody to the agreement that possession is real, that you are influenced and controlled both independently and separately by things that have nothing to do with you. And when you're not paying attention, they control you. They influence you. They change you. That happens to you. You need to be aware of that so that you can curate what influences you, what controls you, right? What your interactions in the world are. How you participate matters. So participate carefully. One of the things that makes it bad is a flood of information. And if information is in and of itself valuable because it's facts or something, then we're looking at the wrong things in the world. Most information is garbage and useless. And of the non-useless information, most of it is garbage and useless to you, which is more important. Sally Joe, the real question is, do aliens have spices, gold, or fossil fuels? Asking for a friend. Is it an alien friend? What do we have to give up for it? That's the better question. That was the question in the mini-series V. Dun, dun, dun. Right. And these are the problems. Like, we're so focused on everything but improving ourselves, right? And we're really not paying attention. Ixnay, participate carefully and better. Exactly. Needed convos. What would you tell my mom if you could about the alien thing? Should I trust her? Of course you should trust her. She also had someone there with her. Yeah, okay. I'm seriously not kidding, by the way. The crazy part is it's the most cliche alien. Did the alien do something to her that has permanently affected her life? Or can she just move on? Like, I don't understand. Like, sure, aliens. And? I mean, if aliens are real, they've been here all along, or at least known about the place all along. And your behavior was what it was. Why can't it continue to be that? I don't understand the argument. It's like, you found out about something that had been going on in the world all along, like all the wars in Africa that no one talks about, right? Because Africa is this big continent with lots of countries in it and lots of wars going on pretty much all the time. Some civil, some between different countries, right? Oh, nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the droughts. Nobody talks about, right? Or occasionally they do, right? how did that affect your life before you knew about it? And should it affect your life after you know about it? Right. Interesting to have a heads up on. That's about it. Needed convos. Yes. Telepathic communication jumped over the car and was 10 feet tall. Maybe. Telepathic communication of what? Like the 9 billionth digit of pi? Like, wait, what? So what? People communicate all the time. Awakening to the Muppet Crisis. You see what you know, to some extent. Needed convos. I agree with you. Yeah, look, you've got to look at the world in terms of what impacts you and how. You've got to look at the world in terms of affordances to you or constraints to you. That's it. Vervaeke talks about affordances and never constraint. Agent arena relationship indeed. Also, who cares? And there's no agent in only one arena, and there's no arena with only a single agent. Oh, now things get complicated again. Yes, they do. Combinatorial explosion confirmed. This is the flat world thinking problem, the middle out thinking problem. That's going to come out in the Dawkins convo, man. I am fired up about that convo. I'm thinking of suing for emotional damage and mental damage, loss of IQ, and a bunch of other things because and the thing is, like, Peterson's such an upgrade from Dawkins. It's hard to go after him because it's like, man, you're doing so much better than this other clown. But honestly, you're both screwed. Like, seriously, you both need a lot of help. You're so far away. And that combo is great though, because it's really giving me some framework and framing to talk about a bunch of stuff that I've been struggling with. Like, how am I going to introduce this? Needed combos. Do you think Jonathan Pageau needed to be in that combo? No, I don't, actually. I think that Jonathan Pageau needs to listen to me so that I can explain to him what he's missing about this conversation, because everybody is missing the same, and it always has been about this. The problem is that you see the world from your perspective, like, obviously. But if your perspective is that you understand a concept such as creation, it will never occur to you ever that other people don't understand that concept. I'm here to tell you they do not. This is the meaning crisis, not the crisis of faith. That's a different one. The crisis, you could get to the meaning crisis by falling through the crisis of faith and into the meaning crisis, right? And then you'll become a creation denialist for real, like somebody who believed in creation and now no longer does. And this is where, unfortunately, again, I hate to say it, I got to find that video, that Ken Ham video I watched one night quite by accident. And I went, oh my goodness, he's absolutely right about that. His solution is stupid, right? And he's a bit of a moron when it comes to implementation of practical solutions. But his diagnosis is dead on. He basically says you can't drag people from where they are on the road straight to the cross. You have to drag them back into creation first and then forward to the cross. That is actually correct. That is 1,000,000,000% correct. No, I've never heard anybody in a Christian frame say anything more accurate, precise, absolutely correct, and helpful than what he's saying. His way of implementation is garbage. But now I understand his project. I'm like, oh, that's why he's got the arc. This totally makes sense. This is the complete wrong way to go about this. But I understand why he did it. But like, he's absolutely right. You need to start from the right place. And I haven't figured out how to do this video, right? But the sad fact of the matter is logic, reason, and rationality do not equal truth ever. And they cannot arrive at or derive truth in any way, shape, or form. Those tools can't do that. Right? I mean, this is why science can't make truth claims, because science's tools are logic, reason, and rationality. It doesn't have any other tools, and therefore it cannot make a truth claim. When I was growing up, this was what was taught in school. Science can't make truth claims. Science has logic, reason, and rationality, and that's the problem. That's the problem. That can't make truth claims. It can't arrive you at truth. It's not possible. And we know this mathematically, which is even funnier to me. I'm like, so the mathematicians understand this, and the rest of the scientists are just holding on to hope. Right. Anselman, as a creationist, I've known this for years. Yeah, look, some people kind of understand this in a way, Anselman. I'm not like I get it. The problem is that they don't have a way to solve the problem because they're not understanding. Like when I deal with people in computers and I talk to them about something like programming. So years ago, my last long contract, I did work for Boston College, which is kind of cool. Actually, it's great. It's very, very, very hard to work for Boston schools without a degree, and yet I finally, after decades, managed it. So I was thrilled. So I was a contractor there for 3.5 years, and they had a bug in Java. It's a Java app. I hate Java apps. It's such a bad idea. All the problems you're going to see with containers are in Java because Java's container-based technology. Containers are older than you thought, right? They were reading in a file that I think was 600 meg, 900 meg. It wasn't 900 meg. It was like 600 meg. It was megabytes of data. Okay. And the application immediately upon processing this data, not after reading it in, upon processing this data, allocated 5 gigabytes of memory on the computer. 5 gigabytes. And I was like, bro, you've got a problem. And I could not explain it to my engineer who had 35 years of C programming experience. And I'm like, why is this hard for you to understand? You have a box that has 4 gigs of data. You add 600 megs of data, and suddenly you're out of memory. And he couldn't understand there was a memory leak. Oh, Java doesn't have memory leaks. I'm like, oh my God. How do you not understand this problem? He did not understand it. I'm like, you've got 35 years of you know how to allocate memory by hand. How do you not understand this? This is a big problem. And you could, we had a graphing software. I can't remember the name of the software, but we had this performance software that we had borrowed, and it showed you the logarithmic memory allocation growth instantly, right? And then it also showed you like the database connection calls, because what happens, you read in it's freaking double entry bookkeeping of all the things in the world to blow up a memory on a computer. It's literally transaction cost plus or minus. That's it, right? So it's student name, student name by number, right? It's a student ID number. So it's student ID number, right? And then place of purchase, roughly speaking, like did you buy it at the bookstore, did you buy it at the cafe, blah, whatever, right? Vending machines, whatever it was, right? And then a number that was either positive or negative. That's it. That was the entire set of data. So you're reading in that set of data from a third-party system, and you're putting it in your database, so you have it all centralized. That's it. That's all you're doing. And it's 600 megs of data or something stupid. It's tiny, absolutely tiny amount of data. Tiny. And it's blowing up the entire machine that has 4 gigs of memory already allocated and ready to go. It just blows it up. All the other operations it does with the database are fine. And the database calls slow down over time. Like they just, now by time, I mean seconds, because it's obviously, you can process a 600 meg file on a single modern piece of hardware in under a minute. I don't care what you're doing to the file. This easy, right? It's too little data to take any time. So they eventually got it to work through a number of methods. They never understood the problem. And I was like, how do you not understand this? This is so obvious. And it's the same thing with creation. It's the same thing. They don't understand. They just don't understand. Yeah. Look, Anselman, evolutionary mythology is no original perfection and fall. But there's a video of Brett Weinstein out there, is probably 4 years old now, where maybe it's not 4 years old, maybe it's only 3.5 years old or 2.5 years old or something, But he recreates Original Sin in the video. It's hysterical. It's one of his Dark Horse podcasts. It's just so funny. Like, these patterns recur, man. Like, you're not getting around them. Needed convos. What about going back into the dendrocentric creation and starting from there? I don't know what that is. No, just problem is if you don't understand that they don't understand creation, you can't walk them back to the starting points of their arguments or their starting axioms, which is what you need to do. You need to stop assuming that they have the same starting positions and actually make them think about it and explain it to you. Because when you do that, that works. I know I've been doing that for decades. It works fantastically well. Benjamin Franklin. Yeah, but no other category can make truth claims either. That's right. Don't use categories. Problems. Look at that. The world is not made up of categories. Right. Can religion make truth claims? No. Religion is the only way to make a truth claim. Right? Religions that last make truth claims that are true or more true. Religion can dictate dogmas, I guess. Well, of course it can. They need those. Anything will dictate a dogma. Science has dogmas too. You're not getting around the dogma problem. That's not happening. Yon God. The corollary is that truth claims technically have zero value. No, they don't have zero value. A truth claim is the hash. No, it's not. But the hash is not the data. No, the truth claim is the data, and that's kind of the problem. If you pick the wrong data, you get the wrong output. And that's actually how you test the truth claim. You don't say, oh, this starting truth claim must be true because all these other things that haven't happened or can't happen, which is what we're doing. That's why it's so bad today. Right? People are saying like, oh, if so-and-so is elected, we're going to have gulags. It's like, but so-and-so has been elected before and we didn't have gulags. So all the evidence points to the direction that you're completely wrong and a crazy person who needs to be in a mental institution. For real, I'm not being flip. Like, that's actually what the evidence says. But then no one's going to do it because we're all weak and we don't want to like help our brothers out at our own expense. But that's the problem. Young God, maybe not zero value, but it contains no more information than a true false. No, no. Truth contains a number of good outcomes. And if it doesn't contain a number of good outcomes, it's not true. It's not that hard, actually. But you have to deal with outcomes. And that's what nobody likes. They don't like that answer. Young God, the practical example would be just because a traffic light is green does not mean you'll never hit something. That's all about action and not about truth. So science is not containing truth doesn't matter. Of course it doesn't matter. It never mattered. Science isn't predicated on the containing of truth. It's only the recent scientists who seem to think this. It's entirely aesthetic. Well, that's true. And also subject to demonic interference, apparently. Yeah, apparently. I mean, they call it scientism, but you call it demonic interference. I'm good either way. Benjamin Franklin. Young God, the simplest solution is to say on average you have more collisions if you go on red. Right. Well, there's lots of simple solutions there. And that's sort of the point, is that you can actually know things by just observing the world instead of trying to guess everything in your head. Young God, the truth value of the green light is secondary to the just election data collection. No, I don't think so. Jesse's here. Welcome, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Let me finish reading my comments and then we'll continue here. Needed convo. By dendrocentric, I mean the primary perspective you experience a priority to you, transmitting the experience to. You need to drop language. Language is garbage. Just ignore it. It'll be fine. We don't learn anything through language at all, ever. I feel like I hate having to go to this level, but you have never learned anything with language. I'm sorry. And you never will. Like, language is junk. Just give up. Like, the way you learn is either through direct experience or exemplification from other people. Now, that may or may not involve sound. I don't care. Almost all the actual data in your head is from exemplification and experience. And almost none of it is audiobooks, books you read, conversations you had. Sorry. Like if you study Claude Shannon's information theory, Claude Shannon's information theory, and you actually understood it, which most people who studied it didn't, you would immediately know all this. You'd be like, oh my goodness, wait a minute. That means, right. And actually, about half the physicists I know actually understand this. They wouldn't say it that way and they wouldn't apply it that way because that would mean their academic career was a waste of time with respect to total knowledge. And they value total knowledge, age of gnosis, I call it, over practicality, like being able to freaking eat. Because that's why they're in physics. Not all of them. There's a few of them I know who would be like, yes, Mark, go. Right? Some of whom taught this to me, by the way. I didn't derive it from first principles by myself while I was bored. This is so frustrating. Like these people and their freaking language. Screw language and burn all the books. Sally Joe, the niceness, absolute moral cancer. True. Sally Joe, the psychic space dragon produces products are the best. It's science. That's true. Go to sharp.markofwisdom.org and buy some psychic space dragons. The science has proven that they are, in fact, the best. See, Ixnay can confirm. There you go. What more evidence do you need? That is truth right there because it's a bunch of propositions from people who aren't you, who independently corroborated it. Therefore, everybody should buy as many psychic space dragons as they can possibly afford and possibly take out a loan to buy more. Clearly, that's the only logical conclusion to what just happened here, my friends. The only one, Yon God. Do you believe in infinity? It's a concept. I mean, infinity is a concept. I just don't care about it because I can't interact with it and it doesn't change anything in my life. Like infinity, therefore I won't have red sauce with spaghetti. Who cares? Like, what difference does this make? Jesse, take me away from these mad people. How are you doing? What's going on in Down Under?
Oh, mad, yeah. Oh, down under. Oh, there's so many questions there. One thing I did want to say is most people have a symbolic knowledge, and yet they don't want to recognize that. Symbolic being that you put two things together, and in that combination, or in the act of, or the experience of, or in the inspiration, that's where you restore. You're like, trees are for climbing, trees are for burning, trees are for shade. Therefore, I know what a tree is.
That's what knowledge is. Like,
yeah.
This is the funny part. Like, it hasn't come up yet in the Dawkins Peterson talk, but I got a feeling I'm gonna be able to use. I'm just waiting. All this stuff I wanted to use, I've been able to use so far. I'm like, oh, I can talk about all this stuff I never had a way to talk about before because I didn't have this paucity of conversation. Dawkins is just like, he's so stupid. It's like talking. And somebody gave this idiot a degree. Really? This is a problem, guys. Right? But like at some point, one of them's going to mention knowledge or something. And, so far it's been facts, but they're going to mention knowledge and be like, all knowledge is symbolic. Let me prove it to you. And I will, because it's easy to do. And just nobody bothers. They don't think about signals, information, knowledge, understanding. They don't understand where facts are in that equation. Like there's a rich world, a rich enchanted world. If you actually understood this stuff, how many pieces there are. And that's one of the things I get to go through in that convo is all these pieces that they're missing. I'm like, guys, you can't understand what you're talking about. You can't, because you're missing all these pieces. You can't talk about memes without talking about transmission methods. Well, then what are memes? Well, if memes aren't also the transmission method, and of course they aren't, then you don't have enough concepts in your discussion to actually be able to make any sense of what you're saying. Sally Joe, all is all mortally stagnant. Yeah, well, that's true. Yon God, I actually feel bad for Mark. The eternal defensiveness must supposed to be exhausting and not exhausting. Anyway, I appreciate Wildberger. So the question about infinity had a reason, a mathematical reason. I hate math. All math should die. burn all the books and destroy all the math. Just freaking, man, just live your life and enjoy the cool stuff that our ancestors left us. I mean, seriously. Or enjoy some of Jesse's wonderful music. Jesse has wonderful music. I've listened to it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. More is coming. More is definitely coming. One thing to pick up on the various conversation threads was that vampires at the age we're living in can't see themselves in a mirror. They're completely oblivious to their own parasitic state.
No, Jesse, vampires aren't real. It's like you think it's such a real pattern.
I've watched
You're not
3
gonna
or 4
find
movies
anything-
about this.
You're not gonna find anything more real than an effing vampire. Like, but that's
Totally
Jockin's
real.
attitude in the convo, right? He's just like, well, obviously Kane didn't exist. And I'm like, bro, how do you know that? Were you there? Because, like, I mean, I know you're old, but like, really? Like, how can you make a claim like that? He's such a freaking dope.
Definitely. Anyway, you can venture to Hades. I think someone else did that for me, so I'm fine. Like, like I don't want to go there.
Dante took care of this. I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Open Futures. If you search the internet for Open Futures X9, you'll find it. What else has been happening? I guess the whole we have craziness down and under, trying to push through digital ID and anyway, that's political. But also, I think the bigger problem here, it's probably the same problem in America, is that the distance from heritage and culture is just it's just insane now. It's something that's been on my mind too, about this sort of flattening of the world is even happening in the way people behave, and the way. But you go to the South. In America, there's a certain way you behave to signal that you're from a certain place. There used to be that here. There used to be, oh, you're from Melbourne. I can hear that in your voice. Like every time Andre talks, I'm like, yeah. His mannerisms and everything. And then the same thing we have a state above us. In Queensland, the same thing too. It's the sunbaked state, so the people are far more 1960s blissed out. Those sort of temporal locations that you could put and say, yes, I understand this way of. I acknowledge. Probably is better I say is I acknowledge what I am receiving from person or the culture because it has a place, it has a temporal thing. This is no longer the case down here. It's
Oh, wow.
You're like, maybe this person's come from this. No, you have to kind of draw it out of person, and that's
right.
Well,
and
place to be in.
Right. Then they have nothing to contribute because they're not actually from that place. So they can't transmit the goodness of that place to you. And any goodness they can transmit must be interpreted. And maybe that's hard for you to do, right? Sally Joe, lol, yes, vampires. Ixnam, where is Jesse's music? That's a good question. Jesse's going to post a link in the private chat, and I'll post it in the public chat now. Thank you, Ixnam. Benjamin Franklin, mutual vampirism is symbiosis. There's no such thing, and it wouldn't be. Parasites are real. Asymmetry is the order of the day. Even physicists know this. That's why there's more matter than antimatter in the universe. That means the universe is fundamentally asymmetrical. So all of this thing equals thing in both directions nonsense can't be correct ever. Binary thinking is bad. It's all the same thing, by the way. I get it if you don't see that, but it's actually the same thing. Binary thinking, symmetrical thinking, equality doctrine, these all come from the same place, and they all lead to the nihilism, all of them. It may take a long time to lead to nihilism. You might die before you hit the nihilism. Also, don't do that. Just don't do that. Yeah, there's a very big difference between those two things. A very big difference between parasitic and symbiotic. Symbiotic is where someone's getting... There's a net positive in a symbiotic relationship. Let me just post this, Jesse. There we go. Bang. as requested. Jesse's music. Jesse's awesome music, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Are they all lit up about our election over there?
I think what's happening is they're putting in through this whole other thing about being 16 in order to use social media. So it's kind of being smokescreen for what the
Wow.
American side. Yeah.
How would they enforce
just,
that?
That's a great. Essentially, a digital ID. Essentially, you have to have your a government mandated code that unlocks, like your use your email address to log in to Facebook or whatever. You'll have that's pretty much my understanding of what they're trying to do. Yeah, it's another Fabian socialist thing. It's crazy. The reason why we call it the land down under, the clown wolf. So, yeah. I have a whole bunch of different things that I'm trying to work out in my space right now, whether they're applicable for a recorded online conversation. Because we're in such mad times, things become far more revelatory or far more easier to comprehend when you're at the end of things. And I was saying that last week too. But it's also where you should be the most cautious, because you're in the most amount of danger.
Right.
When you realize that you were once in the safari, that's most African safaris have walls, and they go, you can come to this bit, and this bit is the bit we control. You go to the edge of that. Well, that's not the bit we control anymore. And things will happen there that we are outside of our bounds.
Right.
And you can even see that too in that's why we have a home just as much, because that's the place, and that's the domicile as well, that I was pointing to earlier. That I think it's probably the most dangerous common element most people living today have, is that loss of home, loss of the sense of this is a place where I've either come from or can go to.
Well, it's one of the things. Yeah, it's one of the factors that I haven't been able to talk about yet, and I guess I'll broach it here, which is one of the reasons why you have to limit something like immigration, especially to, we'll say, an existing land, is that you are taking people away from the legacy that their ancestors built, which is unhoming them, but you're making them parasites upon the legacy that somebody else's ancestors built, and it wasn't built to accommodate their cultural formation. And that has all kinds of potential negative side effects, aside from all the other problems, right? Like, there's a myriad of problems here with excessive immigration. And I think part of the problem, and if you haven't seen The Frontier of Ideas on Navigating Patterns, you need to go watch it now, right? But part of the problem is everyone's following the US and they don't understand the US model. One of the things of the US is there was nothing here, right? The immigrants that came here came into a collapsing society. No, they were not diseased by the people who colonized here. They were diseased by the trade that happened 150 years before Columbus, actually, or thereabouts. Surprise! You had what was Columbus doing in Scotland before he went to Spain and got his money? Was it Spain or Portugal? No, I forget. I think it was Spain. Oh, I don't know what he was doing in Scotland. What an interesting story, Mark. Yeah, someday. You can look that up. I'm sure it's out there. But basically, the Scots had already been trading with North America, and then so had the Vikings. So it's this. So those societies were already collapsing, and they hadn't left a legacy. They hadn't built anything. I'm sorry. Dearly love my North American Native Americans, but also they didn't build anything. They didn't build anything for whatever reason. for better or for worse, didn't build anything. That's why they kept having entire empires grow up, last 150, 200, 300 years, and then collapse again. Whereas Europe had a more or less progressive, linear, right, advancement, at least at a large enough scale, right? At small scales, it doesn't look like that. I get that. But also at large scales, it really does look like that. And so when the people got here, they were filling a gap. And then they built stuff. That's the stuff that I was born into, that my ancestors built, that I'm living off of. Now, I've moved down south, not quite so true, but close enough, because it's the same culture. And if you want to understand the American culture, read American Nations by Colin Woodard. Excellent book. Even PVK, when he finally read it, actually liked that. David, yeah. They built Machu Picchu, right, in the south, and then they had to abandon it after a couple hundred years. Right. Like all the cities in South America, and all the cities in whoever preceded the Aztecs that we don't know. And there was a culture after the Aztecs, and all of that stuff is, except for things like Machu Picchu, which are outliers for sure, because guess how many cities there are in South America that we know about, much less the ones we still haven't discovered. Oh
yeah.
Hundreds, probably well over 1,000. North America, they didn't build anything. Sorry. There's some adobe huts that are left over in the valleys in Arizona, which I very much want to see, by the way. They didn't leave anything. It's not here. I'm here. I'm in North America. I look for these things. Actually, I've been to some of the mound sites. They're rather interesting. There's nothing here, man. Sorry, it's not here. There's a few things in South America overgrown by jungle. Fantastic. Is that leaving something? Europe has buildings older than 3 fallen civilizations in the same region of South America. We're not talking about the same thing, right? We're just not talking about the same thing at all.
To be fair, though, you could look into mud flood theory and speculate if things are far younger than we want. You could play the game both ways. You go everything's younger, or you could say everything's a lot older. It's actually not necessarily that important. What's important is the historiography, what we believe about
right.
ourselves, or the founding principles,
Right.
And you'll start to see that what is modernity? Modernity is breaking away from the founding principles of the West, which
deliberately
was
knowingly and deliberately, which is the problem. Yeah. It's like the solution to doing something deliberately is to stop doing it. And everybody hates that because it's too simple an answer. We've been doing this wrong for so long, and all we had to do was stop. How dare you? How dare you tell me the truth and make something obvious and simple and reveal it to me when I don't want to hear it? Yeah, too fucking bad. Like, sorry, bro, but just stop. Stop opposing, right? Start cooperating. Stop trying to get it done your way and start just trying to get it done any way you can, right? With as many people as you can possibly get in to help, even if they're not doing much. Right?
Yeah. We were actually watching this movie the other day called The Unforgiven, which is an Audrey Hepburn, Burt Lancaster movie.
What's it called?
What was The Unforgiven?
Oh,
Audrey Hepburn, Burt Lancaster. Fantastic movie. It's made right before the change in Hollywood, in my opinion. You start to watch these things from the past. If you read an old book, right, a book that was written before 1900s, you start to encounter a completely different way of being. Let's say it that way, or a different sentiment, or a different principle, a different even spirit that's behind the thing, and that should wake you up to what we're living in right now, which is it's a very dead time, or vampiric time. Anyway, so the movie, it's a great movie, but what and it's everything. But what really occurred to me was people back then, in that sort of Wild West era, let's call it very blanket label Wild West because there's so many things going on there. But they had a very different approach to what life meant. Like giving their life for something was just something you did. Like going, okay, cool, we're
Right.
gonna go rescue the princess or the bride or whatever from the Indians or vice versa. Isn't in the case of this movie. They're like, cool, we'll just form a posse or war band and we'll go off, and it was like, okay, no big deal, let's go do it. Let's possibly risk death to make something happen in the world is not something that we would do now. We're so risk averse to even, I don't want to eat in that new restaurant that's down the road because no one's told me it was good. Let alone, let's go and do an act of virtue to, that might cost us limb and life. Yeah, Around the World in 80 Days is also.
Yeah, you think Sally Joe thinks Journey Around
Yeah,
the World
it's,
in
just,
80
it's
Days
another.
is, yeah.
It's that sense of like, okay, I will start an adventure without a known destination.
Mm.
That's
Well, it's
completely-
that adventure, right, which is linked to exploration, which is one of the other additional states that these psychologists and psychiatrists, even though it's all over their data and is sometimes explicitly mentioned, they never talk about it. It's like the unconscious. They never talk. I'm like, the unconscious is more important than the conscious. You'd think they'd talk about it more, but no. Exploration is super important, right? And it's always like, well, you move away from unknown things and towards known things, except when you're in exploration mode, and then you do the opposite, by the way. That's weird. No one talks about that. I'm like, but that's actually the normal average mode. And if you take that mode and you center it away from, we'll say, unbounded potential towards bounded potential, so that would be video games, then you're just sucking the exploration out of people. And why would they leave their mother's basement? I mean, they've got Cheetos, Jesse, and Mountain
and
Dew, bro.
energy drinks, Red Bull. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, don't get me started on Red Bull, man. I miss Red Bull. Oh,
Sorry.
cases.
I'm convinced that there's a demon living behind Red Bull, but that's just different conversation for a different day. There's something.
No.
You'll notice the people that are drinking V or Red Bull or whatever, or those drinks, they tend to look a certain way and tend to act a certain way. It's very, very strange. It's like, did the thing find you or did you find it? I don't know. I don't know how that works.
I had it under control, but I had lots of things under control, and I knew when to give them up. I knew when, no, this is
that's important. That's
not
very
good.
important.
Right.
Very
I don't
important
drink
to have
any
your biases in check.
caffeinated drinks at all other than tea. And very rarely do I drink real tea. Sanjuro got me some lovely tea, though. Oh, my God. It's beautiful. It smells gorgeous. Tastes different from how it smells, too, which is a sign of a really good tea. It's absolutely beautiful. But, you should know, like, you can't engage with the things you engage with in your 20s forever. And you have to know when that line is and cut them off. I did. But yeah, man, there was one time when I was in the middle of learning something, 72 hours, bro, in front of a computer. Now, I didn't do that very often, though. That was the thing. I never, even at my height, I never did that very often. I was always a Pomodoro technique guy where I'd be like, you know what? Got to get up every hour. I had to train myself. I had to learn all that when I was young. I was like, oh, no. I can get sucked into this stuff and I'll sit in front of a screen all day. And the thing is, like, if you're coding something and you get stuck and you get up and leave and come back, you will code about 3,000 times faster. For real. There are measurements you can do, but like, yeah, it's way better when you get stuck at any task to give up early and go do something else and come back to it, because your insight happens in the bath, happens on a walk. Right? Well, the insight is the thing that gets you past the thing that you're stuck on, whether you realize you're stuck on it or not, which is when, right? That's what's really confusing.
Even just making a list of the things that you're not getting, you just go, okay, I got 10 things in my mind that I'm not getting. I'll make a list, and by the time you've finish a list, you're like, actually, I can't accomplish that thing, so let's go and then momentum back again.
It's not. See, this is the thing, Jesse. You don't understand. Okay, I love this guy, but he's constantly like, "Where's my Matrix video, Mark? Where is it?" You know, constantly hounding me. I hear him in my dreams. Where's the Matrix video, Mark? Where is? There's a bunch of them. I mean, he's not the only one. Isn't the illusion of exploration what the Matrix sets up with the red pill? It's not the illusion of exploration because there's an actual exploration going on. I think the problem is it's the promise of gnosis. And this is the same as the problem I mentioned earlier with video games. There's a promise that you're going to get involved in an exploration that is safe for you, where you will triumph. And in the old days, Shackleton didn't know if he was going to make it back. And if you ever read his story, it's like, how the freaking hell did he survive? How did any of them survive? Wait, oh, you guys wait here. I'm going to walk through the freaking snow and get help in a place where there is none. And then he did, which is like, what is even happening in the world? His story is not, it's not that his story is not likely. His story is impossible. Like, everything that happened to Shackleton is so freaking unlikely that if you read his story, and it's all documented, there's freaking witnesses out the yin yang for it, you're like, of course there's a God, you dumbass. Look at what happened here. Like, you don't need any other evidence, you moron. It's right in Shackleton's story. And he's not the only one with stories that are so bonkers. It's like, this isn't possible statistically. There's no mathematical model that explains any of this. What are you, high on drugs? Whatever that, if that's what you believe, you owe me those drugs. You're withholding drugs from me that I desperately want. How can you be that freaking delusional? That story alone should make you question reality. Like, for real. I'm not joking. It should make you question. Shackleton's story should make you question everything you know about the world, unless you already live in an enchanted world and you understand what's up. But video games, you're not going to get stuck in the ice and lose a couple of limbs due to frostbite. It's all good, man. But it's still an exploration. That's the Matrix. Nothing bad's going to happen to you in a sense, because you're just going to get out of the video game for a while. And that's what happens. You get out of the video game. You go on a different exploration. So it's not the promise of an exploration. Like, it gets delivered. It gets absolutely freaking delivered. Sally Joe. More information will not help make the Matrix video. That's true.
There's so many things that just came up there. One, for me, my reservations about the Matrix videos is that, one, is containment. It's perhaps some of these conversations are better offline than online, for multiple reasons. So I've said that publicly now, because, you know, and what's the Hans Bruckmacher quote? You see what you know. So
yeah,
if me and Mark start showing you things about the entertainment industry, let's call it that way, or modern story, parasitic storytelling, you might not want to know these things. It actually might be safer for you. It might lead you down some roads that you're not willing to walk yet.
To be fair, let me add some flavor to that. The reason why we haven't, I mean, it's not that we haven't started. We have a huge document, actually, right? And either of us could literally just riff about the Matrix at any time. Walking down the street, somebody walks up to us, right? Like, this is not a problem. The problem is not that. The problem is, what information do you deliver as part of a Matrix video, and what information do you deliberately withhold because it's actually dangerous for people? And I don't even know that either of us has an answer to that, but it is the only thing in essence that we start talking about when we discuss doing the Matrix video stuff, because it's like, man, how far do we go and what do we have to withhold? And
how deep is the rabbit hole? Yeah.
Even if we decide, like, even if we figure that out, then we have to figure out the sequencing of the stories so that you understand it, because without the sequencing of the stories, you won't understand it. Which, again, I just did 22 minutes of Dawkins and Peterson and O'Connor. And the thing is, with hold sequencing, bang, all kinds of things happen. You will hear things in a conversation that nobody said if they just leave out a little bit of framing, or
Yep.
leave out a sequence, or speak out of order. And if you want to see that, I exemplify that in the Vervaeke Peterson conversation. Although, man, I don't know which part it's in, and I know I don't know how I didn't release part 2. I have it. I don't know how it didn't get out this week. I apologize, but I'll get it out next week. I'm gonna release it on Monday, I think. Right? But like, you see that in that conversation, there's a whole bunch of framing. These two have been having conversations for decades now, and who knows what's missing? And they're just talking away, and you're going, I know what John means, and you don't know what John means for sure. I know what Peterson's talking about. No, you don't, because this isn't in their published works. They're talking about they're having an ongoing conversation they had without you for years before either of them were online. So you're going to project all kinds of things into that. And that's part of the problem with doing a Matrix video. It's the same problem. Like, how do we structure this so people don't just project the things they've already seen in the Matrix back into what we're saying? And what is it that we want? The big thing for me, and I've said it a million times now, but I'll say it one more time. No one ever got out of the Matrix. The machines still control everything. Like, why do you think this is some great rebellion triumphant movie? That didn't even happen. Not in all three of them. Don't worry about the fourth one. I understand the fourth. I saw freaking Jesse. You're not gonna believe this. I saw some freaking thing came up on my feed. I didn't watch it, obviously, but it was like, the fourth Matrix movie was never meant to be good. And I'm like, did you not watch the first 2.5 freaking minutes? Are you retarded, or are you doing this for clicks?
Come on. It's a great video. He puts out a good case, but
what do you mean?
It doesn't redeem the movie. It doesn't redeem the movie. I'm just saying he made it great.
The beginning of the movie, they tell you they're doing this. They're blowing up the movie and the franchise on purpose because they're pissed at the studio. I mean, they could say it that clearly and it would be a tiny bit more clear, but it couldn't actually be more clear. In the beginning of the movie, they tell you this. I'm like, why is this a YouTube video anybody would ever watch? It's in the beginning of the movie. They tell you this. Why is this interesting? I don't understand.
Well, there's that thing that you were saying too before, where pointing to action or operation, but claiming to talk about, actually pointing to revealing more and more knowledge. I think, and that's the contention. Going back to the original thread of the Matrix, is what is the teleological statement of the Matrix? Now, I've already played a card on the table now for most people, is that when you're watching a film, you should think of it as a magic trick or as something that's claiming to make a statement about reality. You can go look up the not ethic, or it's the is it ethnography? The meta commentary of what storytelling in theater is, which is it was always coming in and out of town, make a mockery of something, or tell a story about something, quickly get up and go. And then that came at no longer the traveling wanderers. It became a thing you did in a theater as containment itself. And then from there, you start to have all sorts of craziness. Because it's one thing to have foreign storytellers or people telling magical tales, and you can get rid of them. It's another thing when they're actually invited into the city, and kind of take up resonance and root.
Or they're flooding the world.
Matrix too.
Or they're flooding the world. So in many ways, Europe's still doing it right to some extent, not as true anymore, right? Where, of course, the Americans, because we do this. I did this the other day. Like I was talking to my buddy in England, and he was like, "You got to watch this, this series." And I'm like, "Okay." And I had heard of it before, and he told me the theme of it, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll go seek that one out. It sounds good." But I said, what the hell is this, dude? You guys in your freaking a season is 6 episodes or whatever. Like, what is wrong with you people over there? Right. But because see, everybody knows the season's 24 episodes, Jesse. Because here, right? Like in some ways,
television advertising, yeah.
Yeah, the United States to the rest of the world is the same as Texas to the rest of the United States. We just overdo everything. We just flood the world with garbage, right? And so, having less media, less often is just better for your culture, right? And so your culture will decay less quickly because it won't get flooded out by media, right? Or maybe the flood of media, such that maybe it's inevitable. I don't know. I don't think so, but could be, right? Happens slower, and so it's not, it's not as big a deal. It can be absorbed and adjusted to, right? Critical Drinker did a great, I guess it was a Halloween special thing in England years ago. I can't remember the name, but it was a one-off because they used news presenters and presented it as real when in fact they were, and they were telling a ghost story thing, and it started off with, obviously there aren't ghosts, and we're just debunking it and kind of not taking it seriously. And then they just built it up just perfectly so that like they were simulating, actual ghost events on TV, and people were terrified, and people ended up in the hospital and stuff, and in England, and oh yeah, it was really bad. Right. But he said it's only been aired once, and because you can only do it once, and no one's ever done it since, because you can't do that trick twice ever. The US has never heard of this concept. And so Blair Witch comes out, which is a very similar thing. It's not quite the same, but it's very similar. It follows that pattern, right? And then there's 7,000 freaking Blair Witch movies. I'm like, bro, you can do the Blair Witch Project exactly once. Yeah. You can't do it again. But like Europe in general has a history of being able to do that. They do the one-off thing, and they never do it again. Right. And like
what's seen as virtuous actually in Europe.
War of the World.
Well,
in the US, done once, never done again. Right. But it's very rare. In the US, usually we do it 17,000 times because we're retarded. And that's just once a pattern.
How many seasons of Supernatural do you need? Yeah. Or X-Files or Friends. Friends is basically one episode strong.
The Mars Invasion radio thing. That's what we were just saying.
Yeah, that's the War of the Worlds. Yeah,
that's the War of the Worlds.
What's his name?
H.G. Wells.
Citizen Kane guy. Yeah, H.G. Not H.G.
No?
No.
Isn't it Wells? Oh, it's the other one. Is it the other one?
Smokes the cigar. What's his name? Did Citizen Kane. Orson
Welles.
Did.
Orson Welles. Oh, that's what it is. It's Orson Welles. Yeah, H.G. Wells is the author. Orson Welles is the radio guy.
Basically, right. Same thing. I think the other thing too, if getting back to the weave, as Trump would say, is how bad is the world right now?
I just heard about that today. I knew nothing about it until today.
I've been loving that metaphor for weeks since he first said it. Was that the West has a quality problem? We fail to recognize what quality is.
Yeah.
This is what you're just talking about too, seeing that the abundance of quality as a measure for there's abundance of quantity for a measure of quality is where we're exactly wrong. Yeah, we've gone exactly wrong right now.
The US,
Instagram. Yeah.
The US doesn't believe in one-offs. Well, no, it's that we don't control our society in the way that it's controlled in the old world. And that's part of the problem. Like the BBC was very controlled system, for better or for worse. And we could argue now for worse, but earlier I would argue for better. I loved the BBC growing up. I loved it. It was fantastic. Obviously, they made the greatest sci-fi show of all time, Blake 7. So there's that. And that was actually the most requested show for re-air on the BBC, like well into the 2000s or something. It was such a good show. That's how good it was. Yeah, and you want real philosophy? Watch Blake 7. You'll get real pragmatic philosophy from a show like that. That is such a good show for that. Yes, The Weave. Okay, Sally's all over The Weave. Sally, canned culture, much like canned food, is causing diabetes. Sally and her diabetes, cultural diabetes, have not adapted to plenty. Well, that's certainly true. But before we used to export our plenty. I mean, we were the U.S. was to some extent a purpose was to export back to England so England could survive, right? I mean, that's what it used its colonies for. Right? It had an unsustainability problem with respect to growth, right? And I mean the mostly unknown and seldom told story about all the shipwrights, which are the most brilliant people in your culture back then, moving out of England and to Maine, basically, or what is now Maine. It was Massachusetts at the time, in the New World, and then cutting down the superabundance of super trees, because I mean, there's probably more trees in Maine than there could ever be in England or something, just because Maine is nothing but trees to this day. And then that won us the war. That's actually a huge factor in the Revolutionary War that people don't understand, is that, yeah, they didn't have any shipwrights and they didn't have any trees. And so, yeah, when they fired a cannon at the USS Constitution, it actually bounced off. And when we fired cannons at their ships, it actually went through. Why? Because they had weaker lumber that they got from the Black Forest or something that was, 50 years old or whatever. And we had 300-year-old lumber. It's that simple. Like, there's just a mechanical, physical reason behind better ships. But also we had all the shipbuilding talent on top of the better lumber. So we won the naval engagements. Sorry, bro. No, I'm not sorry. I live here and I love it. Haha, you lose.
I mean, a thread to give to Sally is to go do some exploration into Andy Warhol and what he was exactly saying in 1960 with the Campbell soup can. He's actually said for most of his career, which is this sort of mortality salience or this kind of rumination on what the culture was doing to itself, and he kind of being a mirror and showing it back, which is kind of counterculture and very reactionary. Yeah.
It was, but at the same time, it was a flip back, because he was also feeding the diabetic sugar and making money off of it at the same time. And he knew exactly what he was doing, because, to your point, that's what he was showing people, especially with the Campbell soup can thing, right? And then everybody misinterprets his art because they're all stupid and they didn't listen to what he was saying. It's like, bro, he's telling you exactly what the art means. And you're going, no way, man. I see what I see in it because I'm an individual. What are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Well, I think there's that sort of sense of either one and done in terms of the common sense of research or understanding. Is I've approximated what that thing is once, and so I'll just kind of I've made one connection and that's good enough. It was a solid problem. Not going, actually, you need many things to hold a symbol together. You need at least 3, right? I would say 4, but you'd say in order to have a kind of a true sense or a true knowledge about what's going on. And most people just go, oh, okay, 1-to-1 match. That's all I need to know. What's
Sally Joe? Oh, Andy is fascinating and leans into money laundering, beginning by selling your persona instead of making virtue visible. Yeah, well, he's pointing across at the culture, at the diabetic in front of him, instead of pointing up at the solution to the diabetes. And he makes money off of it. I begrudge him $0. He took well, yeah, I mean, you can't begrudge him for, look, you're going to have to take money because the world operates on money. It's not optional. Wasn't Monet's?
Yes,
haystack?
He does 9. Yeah, he does
actually showing different light. That's for sure. Well, yeah, sure, maybe.
It's hard to know though, especially with like Bach, working my friend Sahan. And he says that Bach's studies for composition, that was never meant to be, here are my great works. It would be meant to be, here are some piano exercises that I do. These aren't my completed works. But the flip is that now we treat those what is it, 26 of the Great
Mm.
Quark tunes as like, oh, that's his definitive work. As no, you've got it the other way around. Same thing with Monet there. Whether he was just doing 9 paintings of one haystack to teach himself light, now it's become parasitic again, and we view that as the like Warhol.
Yeah, it's not even lost quality control. It's no appreciation for the process.
Mm.
It's like, oh, he sits down and paints a great painting. And it's like, well, maybe, but like there's a lot that led up to that. Like there's a lot of things that, and we don't account for how much money. Think about this. How much money do you have to lose to start a successful business? Because that's actually how you have to think about it.
Mm.
Right. But it's all the and it's part of the flattening of the world. Oh, you know, if you build a better mousetrap, the world will be a path through your door. No, it won't. This is well known to be bullshit. It's garbage. It's complete trash. That's not true. If nobody knows you built the better mousetrap, no one's coming to your door. If nobody knows where your door is, no one's coming to your door. They can know you built a better mousetrap and not know where you live and still not come to your door. And how do they know it's a better mousetrap? Because it's been built? Certainly not. There's a lot more going on, and we're reducing it all to this one thing. Why? Because we can build a better mousetrap. I actually did, by the way. I built a very better mousetrap, ironically enough, because, you know, when I was younger, especially when I was a really young kid, I believed that. But for me, coming up with better mousetraps was like nothing. I could invent things in about 5 seconds. You could literally just walk up to me, and to some extent this is still true, but you just walk up to me and just say, Mark, I need to solve this problem. And I'd be like, okay, give me a second. Let me switch frames. And then I just solve it. And people were like, how do you do that? And I'm like, do what? And I didn't know other people couldn't do that. There's this one time my girlfriend called me. She was in college. She's a mechanical engineer. No, sorry, she's a chemical engineer. Very smart, super bright. And she hadn't come home. I knew she was going to be late. She's working on a project, you know, for school, whatever. That's fine. She was way in Boston, so it's 25 miles from the house, right? So she's working late. It's like 9:30 at night. I'm coding or something because I didn't play a lot of video games, so I was coding or whatever. And then she called me up, and especially back then, I hate being interrupted. Just hate it. Like, don't interrupt me. I'm in the middle of something. And so I get a call, and I'm like, all right. Switch frames. Very painful for me, especially back then. It's switch frames, and I'm talking to her on the phone, and she goes, "Hey, I'm not ready to come home." It was late. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, whatever. I mean, you're not coming home early. You have a key, like whatever. Come home when you want, I guess. But like, what are you doing? And she's like, "Oh, we're stuck, and we need your help." And I'm like, okay. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a chemical engineer. What the hell do I know? I don't know about chemical engineering. I know what chemicals are. Like, I know how to put hydrogen peroxide in a beaker and whatever. Like kind of chemistry set when I was 7. Like, what? Sure. And she says that we built a hydrogen car prototype and we need to know how to fill it up without having the hydrogen leak out. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, we need like a gas tank sealing system. And I went, oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, you just use like a normal gas can thing, only inside the thing, you put a ball in a graduated cylinder, basically, and you push it out of the way with the filler thing, and you have it fill around a corner like a gas tank does now, right? And then when you draw the thing out, the ball either falls down from the top or whatever, and then comes down the graduated cylinder, and that'll be a gas seal. And she's like, wow, we've been working on this for 2 hours. And I'm like, whatever. Can I get back to coding now? Like, why are you bothering me with this easy problem stuff? I don't understand. And then she was all grateful and they passed and whatever. But like I just do stuff like this. It doesn't even occur to me that this is miraculous. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Did you just do this? Like, oh wait, leave me alone. I'm trying to code, right? Like these are not real problems in the world. This is stuff that's easy for me to fix. It takes like 10. I did it in real time too. And she was just like, what the hell? And then she gets home and she's like, how did you do that? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Do you mean when you interrupted me when I was in the middle of coding for some stupid problem that took me no time to think about? Like, wow, what is going on? And like, and she told me on the phone, like, we've been working on this for 2 hours. And it didn't click with me at all. I was like, oh, okay, sure, yeah, whatever, man. But then she was like, I was trying to get, dude, I'm in the middle of writing code. Interrupt me. I'm busy. Right. But, and I was happy to help, whatever. Like, I love helping people. That's fine. But like, she was like, no, you don't understand. Like, we're all very smart people. It's senior year in a chemical engineering course at a top Boston school. I was like, whatever, man. Like, I don't understand. Why don't you understand how to do a seal on it? And it's not like I had seen one before. We don't have those things, right? It's not, I didn't have something that and I just went, oh, this prop. No, I just derived it. Like, it's not that hard for me because I see patterns. I'm like, oh, you need a gas seal. Yeah, you probably do. You have a limited number of options, right? And I can just run through the options in my head and rule them out or whatever. So yeah, but apparently most people can't do that. I don't know.
What's the sense of fatigue if you actually work on a problem too much?
Yeah.
You get decision fatigue. I think
Mhm.
that's quite a common thing, particularly in when are you doing a forced course, which is essentially what universities are now. They're now this like sort of like hyper intense. We're going to force all this information and knowledge, or force information into you in hope that you get knowledge. Which it wasn't like that in the past. It was far more disciplinary. You're going to do this number of objectives, and that's it. Now it's multivariate, and that's just, yeah, you're going to get too much.
And people can't do cross discipline. And I only do cross discipline because I'm not a specialist in anything. So everything's so chemical engineers don't understand a simple mechanical principle about gas sealing and basically ball bearings, right? Or spheres. Fair. Why would they? They're not mechanical engineers. Also, I'm not a mechanical engineer, but I'm also not a chemical engineer. And so I'm not constrained by, beakers and flasks, and because everything they do, especially in a chemistry lab, is oriented vertically, right?
Yeah.
And occasionally horizontally, but they're always looking for the vertical flow.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not thinking about things on that axis at all, ever. They don't think about things that way. So like when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, of course you guys didn't know how to do that. Why would you? Like you would never, there's no chemical application for that in the lab. It's just, I'm not a chemist in a lab. So I wouldn't, you put me in a lab and I kind of know some of the equipment, but like, I don't know how to use that stuff. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, yes, sadly that multi-factor approach of, having to know Latin and Greek and English in order to, classify yourself as being able to do rhetoric alone, never mind all the other these other things to do with the trivium that just lost.
Sally Joe.
Yeah, that's a quality problem.
Like when lawyers try to legislate farming and forget seasons. Yes, exactly. Yeah. They're out of their depth. Right. And that's why lobbying is real and important, right? Because it's just that when it becomes corrupt, then it's a problem. But that's what lobbying is for. Lobbying is for farmers to go to Congress to tell them, don't forget about the seasons, dumbass. That's what it's for. It's just that it's become corrupted, and fair enough. Like everything becomes corrupted. There's no solution there. It's just part of the way the world has to be. Sorry, bro.
We had that phenomenon here too in 2020. We had all these fires particularly around power plants, because if they kept a certain amount of greenery or farmland or whatever you want to call it, agricultural land around their property, they could claim green tax credits. What they forgot is Australia, if you don't burn off certain parts of the
Mm.
forest and keep the land that way, the way it's always been meant to be kept here, then once you do have a great fire, all that land that you've just been keeping barren and not tending to just became extra fuel to this huge fire. And we had, I think it was 6 or 7 weeks of constant red smoke here in 2020. So it was just
Whoa.
crazy. All because they thought they were saving the planet, and doing the environmental thing, keeping more barren. It's like, no, you can't. It's the other way around, idiots. So, yeah, it's it just points to containment too. We're just not. Well, how bad is the world right now? Well, we're not containing things properly, even ourselves. I think I
Right.
was saying at the start of the stream, 20
Especially
episodes ago.
ourselves. Right.
It's
Because
how
we
you-
think it,
yeah.
but we think it's ourselves. And it's like, no. You are your brother's keeper. Right? It's like, no, we have to contain each other because we can't contain ourselves by ourselves. That means you have to do things against other people's will, and they have to do things against your will, and that's when people get upset. And it's like, but also you don't have a choice, so you need to do that carefully instead.
Oh, yeah.
That's what people are upset about. I get it.
Well, yeah, it's very. A prescient point too is, social media is a circus, and it would drive you insane to go to the circus alone.
Right.
So
I like
don't
that.
do that. Stop doing that.
I'm going to steal that and not credit
Yeah,
you for
'cause-
sure.
That's fine. It's probably happened before. It's probably happened likewise, mate. At this point, I mean, yeah, we should have that separate discussion about the Matrix. What I'm speculating, and have been speculating, and have been fearful to say, and I'm just going to say it, is perhaps we do that initial meeting about what we've got so far, blah blah blah. We put up something, it's 10 minutes or whatever, saying, hey, but if you want to, there's the opportunity cost is it's going to be offline for $1 or $2, but it's contained in, if you really want this, here it is. These discussions is available as some sort of course. It kind of doesn't make it, because it's I've been thinking about that too, about Jurassic Park and all the things you could pull out of that movie about the atheistic worldview that was propagated in the 90s through that movie. That it's kind of the whole Dawkins meme thing is my sort of contention is that Jurassic Park, at one sense is meant to be about dinosaurs, but the other sense is about the atheistic worldview of this is what we believe about materialism, and we're masters of materialism now. And
When there's a
projecting control
resurrection.
flight. Yeah.
But there's resurrection
too,
and
right.
redemption, right? You're trying to make dinosaurs good. Dinosaurs were not good. Like, I don't understand. Like,
They're not
what
even
are you doing?
dinosaurs. They're hybrids. They're chimeras in that movie. That's the complete lie. They're like, oh, we took some DNA from this thing that we believed was on the dinosaurs, and we mixed it with lizards
Right.
of different. It's like, hey, second, no. So these aren't pure dinosaurs from the get go.
Well, right, but that's the thing. Like, you can't redeem, and when you try, you corrupt. And that's the theme of Jurassic Park. When you try to redeem the past or redeem the bad thing, you make it worse and corrupt it. I know, don't do that, and then that problem never appears in the world to be solved. And that's what we're suffering from, right? That's how bad is it? It's so bad that we keep creating problems that we never needed to create that we now need to solve. And that's eating up a bunch of time, energy, and attention that could be spent building good cathedrals and beautiful buildings and all sorts of other things. But no, now we have like deficits and social media and crazy people shaving their heads and giving the conservatives what they want by swearing off of sex for 4 years. I'm like, this is what they asked you to do to begin
Please,
with, you
Lord, of it, mate.
morons.
Please, Lord, like that.
I know. It's like, that's all we had to do was win an election? Okay, let's win them all. Dumbasses.
Oh gosh, it's a crazy time to be alive.
It is. It is.
I probably should head out on that note. But so
We have to talk about the Matrix thing. So, ping me and let's get that. I still think we should do an initial video and like invite people to pick topics. And then I think you're right. We do that maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever it takes to get through that. And then we say deeper dives or we'll have to make it an exclusive club because there's a lot of stuff where I could tell you things about the Matrix, but I don't know that you want to know them. I don't know that would be good for you to know them.
Yeah, even me. Life lies back. Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to navigate my whole being made redundant thing. So.
Yeah, I know. Well,
it's fine.
Hopefully that's going well. Give me an update offline when you get a chance.
It's not. Knives are out. Anyway, couple lessons. See you soon. Take care, everyone.
All right. See you, Jesse. Oh, so glad to have Jesse here again. That's good. He's going through a lot of stuff though. So look, if somebody else wants to jump in. You get a few minutes, and then I'm gonna shut it down for sure. It's bad, but it's getting better. It was funny. I forget. I don't know. Was it Twitter? It might have been Twitter. But a few people were commenting. Oh, it might have been my call this morning that we did. A few people were commenting like, "Oh my God, we have one election. The guy's not sworn in, and already things are getting better." Yeah, it's kind of like when Elon Musk hadn't yet completed the Twitter acquisition, and everything on Twitter got better overnight. Signals matter. Signals travel faster than events. Oh, right. So once you know what's going to happen in some sense, you start to prepare immediately, right? Once the signal is out that the anomalous results of the last election are over. Fewer popular vote now than 4 years ago. Really? It's so weird. There's only one explanation for that, my friends, mathematically speaking. Once you know that, you can, make plans accordingly. You can plan your life, your existence. You can plan, to build. You can plan more happiness. You can plan all these things, right? It's not now they can be planned, and that is good. And that's why that occurs. The signal matters. The signal matters more than the event, right? Because it's the signal that people follow. Not that they don't also follow the event, because patterns, people exemplify patterns, and then we follow the patterns. We repeat the pattern. But the signal matters more, right? Because that's how people get ideas. They see somebody else's exploration, successful or not, and then they're like, okay, based on that, I'm going to do this. It's like, yes. And then their actions are also in the world in parallel. And that's the other thing. No one talks about parallel because we're all stuck in the video game paradigm, which has no overlap with the world you actually inhabit or reality or anything, by the way. And you can't exact skills from video games. That's actually just functionally incorrect and provably so. I know everyone wants to redeem video games. Don't. There's no redemption there, just like the postmoderns. Video games is entertainment, just like movies is entertainment. Totally fine. I still play video games occasionally, and you need that. You need entertainment. But that doesn't mean it's good for learning. And it doesn't mean it's going to help you with things. And it doesn't mean there are exaptable patterns. No, that's not what that means. It just means entertainment is good in moderation, like most things. So, all right, doesn't look like anybody else jumping in. No Castle. Where the hell's Castle been? Man, Castle. No Sanjuro. I don't know. I feel abandoned and I don't know. I don't know. No ship clerk in my comments. I need a clerk on my ship. What's going on? But look, everybody. No one's hopping in. I'm still for some reason recovering from this crazy kill. And I'm tired from doing that Dawkins Peterson talk, man. That was only 22 minutes. I got a long way to go. It's an hour and a half conversation I got to go through. So everybody have a good night. I'll see you next week. I don't know what the topic will be. And then, of course, the holidays are coming up, travel. It's going to be crazy. So I don't know what's going to go on with all that. But as I know, I will convey it to you. Look forward, look to the channel for the Peterson, Dawkins, O'Connor convo. And I'll get the rest of the Peterson Vervaeke stuff out. It's almost all done. I think I'm just missing a couple of files for the release of the fourth part of that one. And have a lovely week. And don't worry, everything's getting better, and it will continue to do so. So everything will be okay. Don't worry, and be well. Be well.